Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. AJ, good evening to you once more, the first on the chat, and immediately after going live. Spectre, hey, Mr. Ambassador Tiger, congratulations, well deserved. Donut Diplomat, good evening. So nice to see you guys. Happy that you made it to this stream, Spectre, since you had to miss my Thursday stream. And Donut Diplomat is here as well. Perfect, and thanks for the congratulation. Yes, I have to disclose I am part of the Dovetail Games Ambassador program now, which means that I am getting DLC keys for free. CD Radar, perfect that you are here as well. You got my message right last night, last Thursday. We did not manage to get the penalty brake unlocked on the Vectron. Now we know how it works. Just dip the train brake handle into the emergency setting and then we are out of it. Good thing that I just tried it once more. I left the game standing while I was making some food. And all of a sudden I came back and thought, how did I manage to unlock the brakes? And then I tried it again, and yeah, obviously it was not so arcane, the solution. The CFA brake, you have to dip it into the Füllstoß and to unlock the RTB. Penalty brake, you have to dip it into emergency, and it works. Today we're rounding up this 4-video series about the Dutch DLC, 2 videos about signaling, 2 videos about the safety systems, and tonight we will coming back. I hope Lofty makes it to the stream, especially with those weird G and X and Knipper X and L and H signs that are in the game. At least the L and H signs are. The X and G signs are not, because we don't have a tunnel. But we will talk about them as we go. Super Paul 5000, good evening to you. So nice to see you. We have a little bit of Austrian signaling also in my presentation. And CD Radar wonders if that is realistic with the dipping it into emergency. I have no idea. But we will maybe find someone who can tell us. The first thing that I want to do after turning on my markers is some free roam experiment, starting at Meppel, because there is a bridge between Meppel and Zwolle where we can see those L and H signs in action. And for that we have to build up the scenery a bit, put a train in a position where it, well, initiates a certain sequence of traffic lights, of signals, and then we will go back on a different train and prepare a really heavy freight train and retrace our steps, and then hopefully we will see what those signals are there for. So I will just dip across the rails here so that I can spawn a train. Always funny how the people are kicking us about. The SNG is a wonderful train for those experiments because it does not take awfully long to set up. And here we go. So, Juniper, so great to have you on the stream. Good evening to you as well. Let's give this train a path towards Zwolle somewhere. Let's say here. Yes, and we're getting it on the Werksein, limiting us to 40, because the wharf signs can always only give a maximum speed of 40. Going across the switch. And one of the signals that I wanted to talk about in the first part of the presentation is at this signal that we are just approaching right now. Let's dip into photo mode quickly. It looks as if this is just a normal signal that can display a numeral, but if you look on the matrix here, it cannot display a numeral, it can only display the letter H or the letter L. It is a 9x9 matrix, so you cannot create any numerals with it, and this is one of those signals that we want to talk about. It can display an H signal, and we will find out why. Superpole, unfortunately, I haven't had time to watch the other Dutch signal streams yet. I hope I still understand most of it today and won't be overwhelmed. I think you will. Not be overwhelmed, but will be able to understand what we are talking about. The regular signaling is in the other video. Today we are talking about some quite self-explanatory stuff and some a bit outlandish stuff also. And the first patch is a bit outlandish because I don't remember any other signaling system in the world that uses signals of that kind. CRSS H and L means the bulb in the top center will remain in perfect condition. True. That is totally true. Donut Diplomat, is this the last Dutch stream for now? Yeah, probably. So until I have an idea what to do, this is for now the last Dutch stream, so that we can have something else. So we see we are running up a small incline to pass a lot of things. This street, this road, probably more like. After that we are passing a canal and a motorway, and for that, if you look at it, we are actually going across a hill, what is quite rare in the Netherlands, but still they exist. A hill in the Netherlands, yeah. It is an artificial one because we have to get across this canal here. So this is why we have a hill. And I think I will just stop behind this signal here. Just make sure that we get out of the overlap. That does not exist in Dutch signaling, but that we get behind the signal in a way that we can initiate the yellow-red sequence behind us. So probably we should not stop here just on top of the motorway, but you can see why we have this hill for. Actually, apart from that, I'm really happy about how this motorway looks. I've never seen a motorway sculptured that nicely in a DLC. It really looks, it gives you the feeling of being real. That's really a good job. Spectre says, fun fact, the highest point in the Netherlands is right at the border with Belgium and Germany. Really, CD Radar says, probably brought in from the sea. Is it the highest point altogether, or the highest point that is served by a train? So let's go back to Meppel. And just leave the other train here, blocking the path. And let's see if it works as intended. Obviously we need a bit of a... Maybe we have to remove the other path first. Because I cannot set a new path. Still. Ah, Quatsch. It was the wrong train. Nonsense. Here I can set the path because this is my active train. And I want to go behind this signal here. So this is actually enough. I had a green even before I set the path. Because of the automatic signal. The 3 London Punt, the Spectre, not served by trains at all. Juniper's, yeah, it's by Aachen. And see there, I'm no expert in Dutch highways, but a double solid line in the middle and none on the edge doesn't sound very realistic. Yes, that is true. I've seen that as well. But it's not about correct road signs. If the railway signals and signs are correct, I'm quite happy. And if you run across it, I think that it really gives you the impression of a working highway, this one. Even though the lines might not actually be correct. But as they said on a couple of streams, it does not need to be realistic, it just has to give the impression of being realistic. And you can see the cars running by at a proper speed, on a proper level. So there are a lot of things, scenery-wise especially, that I'm quite happy about. And those other, so the cars sometimes seem to pass with very little distance between them on those smallish routes, but also that is a niggle that I can live with. Classic Europe. So unfortunately they're slowing us down quite severely to 40 when approaching Meppel here. Happy they drive on the correct side of the road, says Spectre. Well, it is all a thing of getting used to stuff. But it's a good thing that you don't have to switch sides of the road when going from Germany to the Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg and France. Here we have a flashing green, also with a bit of an out of tune flashing animation, right? It looks like the light itself is not flashing at all, it's only the glow that is flashing. So we can see why we are slowed down to 40, because for whatever reason they are sending us here, so we can go through the station line proper. Why the dispatcher is sending us here, I don't know. It would have been totally okay to go around the platforms. Juniper, it is a new feature that starting a scenario, get a panoramic camera moving into the driver's cab, or am I just playing this scenario for the first time? Probably you're playing the scenario for the first time. I don't think that this is a like those camera rolls. It's been quite a while that they talked about that, I think. And CD Radar says, I don't dispatch this station. No, you're not. So I'm safe. There is actually no subsidiary signal in a sense, as you would talk about ein Ersatzsignal in German signaling or the Polish version. What there is a white light that works a bit like a Kennlicht and just removes the signal out of the sequence, but you need at least a clearance for shunting to pass it. But I have not found any signal in the game that can show this white light. So we're getting close to where I wanted to stop this train. Good thing if you know that you're the only person in the world. You can be quite sure that you can jump out of your train on the opposite track without anything being a problem. So this is this set of signals that can show an L signal. I want a new train and then maybe spawn the Vectron with a lot of cars. S cars, 30 Habines. That should be quite heavy. Or at least it allows us to pretend that this is a really, really heavy freight train. And we're coming in here. Huh? To aim higher. Safety systems, key, in with the brakes, open main circuit breaker, lower the panto, Dutch settings, E key, back to home, panto up, panto is almost up. We see some juice coming in the train. Now we can close the MCB. And it is closed. Before we release the brakes, let's see if the dispatcher can find a path for us. And I actually want to go just behind the other train that we put into the way. What is on top of this hill, or almost on top of the hill, a bit still in the incline with a train like this. And this is exactly what I hoped that would happen. We're getting a green light and this funny L signal for us as a super heavy freight train. Other thing is how this signal can be a P signal is beyond me. We know P signals are permissive signs, typically automatic signs, and because they are permissive we can pass them on red. But what does this signal here protect? It protects a junction coming in from the right. So just imagine we are passing this signal at red after we have unsuccessfully tried to reach the dispatcher. Passing the signal at red, going on side, and then there is a train coming in with 140 from the right. There is no way going on side can actually help here, because the first time they can see this train and trains coming from the side is typically not what... From the side is typically not what we have to be prepared for on site, and after having passed the junction, we can go on site as much as we want. The other train is coming from over there and running into our flank. So most probably they took the wrong asset here. And this sign should not have a P sign. It should not be a permissive one. But this does not have anything to do with the L. And Juniper says the ICE3M did a goodbye tour yesterday through the Netherlands. It came really close by my house, which was cool. It took an unusual route via Bad Bentheim. Oh, that is nice. Well, not nice that the ICE3M was retired. And they probably did not use the Tigerways livery for this tour, even though the orange might actually go well in the Netherlands. Yeah, I think it would also be retired in Germany. Yeah, those are the things, right? Yeah, but going back to our L sign, we will just go past it. A shame, right? It didn't take the Tigerways livery. Or that they retired the ICE3M. Oh, it's also a shame. So, get our train brakes free. Probably have G brakes. If not, then we should have G brakes actually. It is set to G, yes. Very good. Maybe we should use the reverser, and we can actually accelerate better. Was it the Habeen cars that have this really slow brake release? Because it sounds like we are just grinding the brakes on 30 Habeen cars. Well, it is not for no reason that the Bremsvorschrift tells you to wait a couple of minutes before starting your heavy freight train. But it's actually quite nice to demonstrate what a bother it is to get your train, your brakes released on a train like this, and how quick it happens to release and apply brakes. This sounds really spooky. I wonder if they are releasing it all at the back here. Well, in Netherlands and Germany they are retiring the ICE3, but here in Czechia we will have trains from 1980 running until 2030. The sound that it makes is scaring me, says that is true. It is really scary. Let's see if it actually vanishes sometime. So, again, don't try this at home. The brakes are not releasing on those cars here. Maybe they will release in a couple of minutes. Inspector says the Baureihe 420 says hold might be yeah, Don't try this at home. It's not like I have a Baureihe 193 standing in my yard. Yeah, but you can actually feel it. It's getting a bit more easy for the locomotive to pull this train. And maybe this is just one of the batch of Habeen cars that are still suffering from this G-brake bug, where it takes forever to release and apply G-brakes. But what I wanted to show with that is definitely that releasing and activating... Do we now have any lights on this Vectron? It looks so dark. Maybe because it is in auto. Where is it? Somewhere around here. Auto is not good. Now we have it. 20% now I want the Baureihe 193 for my birthday. Yeah, you need to switch them on via display. Or like this, through the display says we don't have anything on. This is why I was with auto, and now I overrided it with the switch. And you can hear the brakes have finally released, so it actually took quite some time for them to release. And to get our train running. And what a bother it was. And this is exactly why we have those signs, because it is such a bother to release the G-brakes and get the train running. And now imagine doing this on an incline, or just in front of an incline. Not on the level ground like here, but up a hill. And down a diplomat, well, if you have around 4 mil euros laying around. Now we're passing Meppel station. And the next signal that we're passing is the one that I directed your attention to when we were leaving it with the Sprinter. It shows a yellow light. That means it is a proceed aspect. But if we look closely, what we can't really do in the game, and we will see if we get a SPAD here, it shows the age. And this age is actually... We're not SPADing. Actually, we should have SPADed here. If our train is one of the super heavy trains that those signals apply to. So why would this age sign stop us here and would not allow us go on to the next signal? Well, I've already spoiled it, because the next signal with the red one is either at the bottom of the incline or in the incline or shortly after the grade, at least in a position where our train is still for a good part in the incline, so that starting it from this red signal would require to do a hill start with this heavy train. And that is something, if it is feasible at all, will burn an awful lot of energy. Juniper says, I watched the DB Baureihe 193 pulling a long train of heavy cargo steel factory through a tunnel, crossing underneath the other rails. That is just what I need. Hit a red signal coming up out of the tunnel. Half of the train was still down in the tunnel. It was slipping and couldn't manage to get going again. A small incline, but heavy trains brought the Vectron to its knees. This is exactly what I need for the presentation that is ensuing here. Why would the system stop us on the level ground away from the hill, and instead of at the red signal here on the hill in the incline somewhere halfway, whatever. Presentation time for the first time tonight. And here we are. Dutch signaling signen for tunnels and hellingen. Hellingen are slopes, inclines, declines, as far as I understand the rules here. So let's look at our problem here. Sand is your friend, definitely, but it does not always fix the problem. This is our line going up a hill. This is our train coming here. Imagine the 30 Habeen cars that I did not put into the diagram here. We have a sequence of signals that would end here in a typical way with yellow, red. So a normal train would just go this way and wait here. And you can see where the problem is. If we are this heavy freight train with G brakes, with slow brakes, and it takes a hell of a lot of energy to get this train running at all, and now imagine have it run uphill, not picking the momentum to get uphill, but just applying all the traction force to get this train running and get it running up the hill. And the same thing will happen if we stop mid-hill or just on top where most of the train is still dangling down the incline. And Spectres is thinking about it. It is quite interesting that the Netherlands of all countries have a dedicated set of signs for hills and slopes. That is probably because they are so uncommon. In countries with a lot of hills and slopes, Ronnie, good evening to you. You would have a system like the Bremshundertstel to decide whether a train can go in a certain slope up and down and maybe how much traction force there is needed. So this is a thing that needs to be taken care of most of the time. In a country where you are almost all the time on level ground, you need to have special rules for the exceptions where are hills and tunnels. At least this is my understanding. So what is it? Our train would be stalled in front of the red signal, and now imagine your super heavy G-braked freight train accelerating uphill. If the train can actually do it, then at least it will burn a lot of energy to do so. This is why we have this H sign that is actually called an H sign, and it is a stop signal for designated freight trains. Not for all freight trains, but for freight trains that are put on a list more or less that have to pay attention to those signals, and those are the heaviest trains that are hardest to operate in terms of braking and releasing the brakes. So this is the number where you can find it in the Regeling Spoorverkeer. And this is why this H sign is a special stop signal for those trains, to stop them in a position where they have enough of a running start to build up enough momentum to get up the slope. And like we've seen, this can even be a small slope that gets us up on a bridge that then crosses the canal and the motorway. And because we cannot just stop when running up to this sign, we get a for sign, a caution signal, and this is the L sign, langsam, halt. In German, more or less the same as in Dutch. This is the special caution signal for that. So when we are passing the screen, or in our case it was green, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a green signal. For normal trains, we can just ride on a high green. But as a heavy freight train, we know we have to stop at the location where the H sign is shown. And that, well, we just were YOLOing in because I wanted to test if the game actually spats us out here. I don't think that the game has any parameter where we can designate some freight trains to being so heavy that they fall under this rule, especially since this is free roam and there are no freight services in the game yet that are so heavy, because the Vectron services just have like 5 or 6 tank cars, empty ones on top of it. So I don't think that those signals can actually work like this. So we have to role play this more or less and stop our heavy train in front of the H signal. But I think it got quite clear why we do this, so that the train can get a running start up the hill and does not have to start rolling uphill with all its mass that it has. Yeah, the number for the L sign is the 276. So those signs are in the game and they are working. They are not working in the way that they spat you out, but at least they light up in a situation like this. That was the slope. And why is it connected with tunnels? Because tunnels in the Netherlands are not like tunnels in Switzerland or Austria, where they are typically through a mountain and going uphill on winding tracks and stuff like this. But many tunnels in the Netherlands are tunnels underneath a body of water, be it part of the sea, be it a river or whatever. And in this case, in this scenario, a tunnel is more or less a combination of a downward slope and an upward slope again. And what you definitely do not want with your heavy train, with your heavy freight train, running into the tunnel, if it can run out on the other side, it's great. But if you have this in the tunnel and stopping the train in the tunnel or halfway on the slope out of the tunnel again, then our train is trapped on the bottom of the pit, more or less. And then what Juniper just said happens, the train might actually not be able to get out of the tunnel again on its own force. Then you need to send a helper locomotive to push or to pull the train or whatever, and this is obviously a major operation that can block the line for a significant amount of time or length of time, and you don't want to do this. So if your train gets caught in this situation, a train that is really heavy, in this case it is more or less every freight train that is heavy enough to work like this, you want to have a clear passage, right? So you have a special signal that stops trains from entering the tunnel if there is no clear passage through the tunnel, especially up the slope on the other side again. And this will be here, and this is not the H sign, but it's an X sign, a sign that is in a white frame, and it is an X sign that can light up here. WIT X, a white X is a stop signal for freight in dedicated trains. So it is a bit different. It is not only special freight trains, not designated. Why did I say dedicated? Designated. Sorry, that is the wrong word here. It is designated trains. It's freight trains or designated trains. It can be a passenger train with some brakes not working or whatever. And all freight trains are actually fall under this signal. And Ronnie says in Germany, we say stell durch, ich bin schwer. And I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Or translate a bit to give me a path through, I am heavy. Well, if that works, it's great. If you have automatic signals, you can talk a lot to those automatic signals. Obviously need a caution signal for that, and that would be a flickering or a knippernd, a flashing X. Why do I have the dedicated here on the bottom line? That is annoying. I thought I fixed this. It is designated trains. Sorry guys, I have to fix this. I have to fix this, otherwise it will annoy me all the time. So let's see. On the bottom row it is wrong. I'll be there in a second. Now I've got to find the relevant part of my presentation again. And then we will be back. Stell durch, ich bin schwer. Well, this can actually be a thing that we can use in SimRail and dispatching. It is super annoying if you get caught in a ditch with your heavy train. And oh, I did not know that my presentation was that long until we get to this point here. Now I'm already at the verbeterte Versie. And now we will be here very soon, and the knipperend X. This is where we have been. And I'm back with the presentation. CD Radar. Hey Ronnie, last time we discussed whether a train with active AFP under ETCS control can brake itself according to the brake curve in the same way as under SB, don't you know? And can, of course, only speak for ICEs, but yeah, then can. They can. So this is answered as well. So here we are back in our presentation. Freight trains and designated trains. So you see the difference, right? The X regime applies to all freight and some other trains if they are on a special list, whereas the L and H signs only apply to special freight trains that are on this list and never to passenger trains. But this is not the end of the story with the tunnel regime. What is actually quite a complex thing. What do we do if we are getting, yeah, this is the number for the 278 for the flashing X, even in a situation where we have a clear run through signaling wise. Just imagine we have a line speed of, say, 80 kilometers. We are approaching the tunnel with 80 kilometers on our train and entering the tunnel with 80 maximum speed. And then we are going downhill. And what happens? Gravity kicks in and our train starts accelerating when we're going down this slope. Since we can't go beyond the 80, what do? We apply the brakes. Being slow, taking a while, applying the brakes on the downward slope takes forever to kick in. And then when they are actually applied, it takes forever to release. What can happen actually? We can stall our train at the bottom of the pit just because we have to apply brakes when running downhill to not go beyond the speed limit, and not being able to release the brakes fast enough so that the train starts slowing down and stalling as soon as it gets out of the gradient. And this is why this tunnel regime limits your entry speed into the tunnel with a special sign. This one here, it is the Entreesnelheidsbord, what is a special sign that regulates the speed with what you can enter this tunnel. Even if the line speed is higher at this point, you have to slow down so that you have enough buffer, enough margin of safety for your train to accelerate on your downhill slope so that you're not going beyond the maximum and still not be in a position where you have to apply your brakes in a significant way so that you don't stall your train on the way down and you don't get stuck on the bottom of the pit. This is the idea of that here. Number 281. And then to make it even more concise for the engineer, you can get like speed gates on your way down where you get told what speed is acceptable to have at a certain point. So you would come with a line speed of 80, slow down for an entering speed of 40 at this point, and then you can see whether you are on a good way or not. So if you are at around 60 at this point, at around 70 at this point, everything is good. Then you reach the limit of 80 when you are here and go with a momentum and speed of 80 into the incline and out of the tunnel again. And those signs here with those black triangles on top, on bottom, are Adviessnelheidsbord, the target speed sign for freight and designated trains. Here it is correct. Inspector asks, are these hard limits or just recommendations? From what I understand the rules, this one, the Entreesnelheid, is a hard limit, whereas those speeds that are communicated with the Adviessnelheidsborden are what it says, advises, right? It is the speed that is advised to you, so that you have some sort of a reference and you can see whether you are on a good way or not. So if you are actually accelerating too fast and need some brakes, or if you are actually way beyond that, and or even running the danger of stalling your train on your way down, right? So this is how I understand this regime. You are limited to a speed lower than the line speed maximum at the entering phase of the tunnel, at the same time entering the slope, and then you can run downhill, and those Adviessnelheidsborden tell you if you are more or less in the corridor that is set out for you. Those things can also come in this version where it is lit up, so it can be shown only if necessary. That will be the 282A version, whereas those are just fixed signs here, just like this one. Yeah, and to warn the driver of a train that he is running into a regime of that kind, it would show, instead of the X, the G sign. So those are not two signs at the same time, shown at the same time, but the X would be the red variant, whereas the G would be the green variant. And Juniper says, why does a lower entry speed help? Doesn't that only increase the chance of getting stuck? No, I don't think so. The lower entry speed allows you to run down the downhill slope, pick up speed because of gravity, and do not need to apply brakes on your way down, ideally. So you don't need to brake on your way down, and you don't have the brakes applied when you're at the bottom. And ideally, the gravity accelerates your train to the line speed, and you run with line speed through the level part at the bottom and hit the incline with line speed and the momentum that you get out of line speed, and your brakes fully released. That is the idea. Does this make sense? Using descents for accelerations reminds me of the PA 135. In the upper box it should say white G. Oh yeah. In the translation you are right. I only changed it for the actual thing, and it should say white G. I won't fix this right now, but I will fix it afterwards. So this is the clear side signal for freight trains and designated here. Yeah, Judith says, yeah, okay, that makes sense, because if you have to brake on the downhill, it might get you stuck on the uphill because the brakes haven't fully released yet. Yeah, that's the idea. You don't want brakes applied when you are getting to the part where you have to get out of the tunnel again. You want to have the brakes fully released and as much momentum as you can have, because the incline will slow you down again. And Donut Diplomat says, I think it makes sense. And Spectre, you're right. Please note that this is obviously the translation of Witte G is white G, not white X. This is just a copy and paste problem here. Again, those signals are not shown by the same time. I'm just showing you the alternatives. This is the way where you have to stop in front of the X, and this is the signal that allows you to go, and at the same time it announces a regime of that kind. So it reminds you, it gives you actually two pieces of information at this point, the G. First, it tells you you have to prepare to slow down to the Entreesnelheid, to not be at line speed, but to be slow enough to enter the tunnel with the slower Entreesnelheid. And it tells you that the whole passage through the tunnel is on go. So it's one of the rare signals that give you additional information about a whole section of track, not only for 2 or 3 blocks in advance like a typical high green signal, but for more signals in a sequence. And that is the 280. On the signal before, it would just be dark, so if it is not flashing an white X, it tells you that you can expect a G on the next signal. And what it reminds me of is this flashing white C indicator, NORAC rule 280A, clear to next interlocking, from the US NORAC rules, that also give you an information about a whole sequence of signals being clear, right? This just because I always see parallels and things. And here this G gives you an additional information about the whole sequence of signals. And see the radar, so even for the passenger train driver, it signals that he can take a nap through the entire tunnel. For the passenger train driver, it tells you at least that the whole sequence is clear. I do not know whether there is a possibility to switch it off completely, so that a train can enter without having to comply with the Entreesnelheid. If you are typically at a train that is not falling under those rules, if you are a normal passenger train, then you have to probably comply with normal signaling, because you would probably only use this regime if you actually have a train in question. Otherwise, you will block your line for much longer time than you want to block it for. Inspect, this is LZB without a cable, right? That give you more information about the sequence of signals, and LZB without a cable. Yeah. This Entreesnelheid thing can also happen on slopes without a tunnel, or with a tunnel and without the G regime here, where you can get it announced by a fixed sign, yellow sign announcing this Entreesnelheid. Also only applicable for freight and designated trains. And this is another word for you, Spectre, Entreesnelheidsverminderingsbord at this point. Right, announcing one of those Entreesnelheids if you don't have this complex regime with the X and the G for the tunnel. So this is something that I tell you as far as I have understood this system by reading a very long signaling document in Dutch, obviously. So it is all subject to my understanding of the Dutch language and the context that this document was written in. I think it makes a lot of sense if you think that you don't want to have your heavy trains being stalled at the bottom of the pit. And yeah, that's that. And yeah, one other thing, in the past there were even more complicated signals on the way down that were only for passenger trains, like little white triangles in the corner of a black thingies, and this all got scrapped. So if you find this in all the rules, if you have an historic route with a tunnel, then we can discuss this again. At the time being, we don't have a tunnel in the game yet, so we don't have this regime. But since it is such a complicated and outlandish system of running trains through the tunnels, there was no way that I would not talk about it, even if Lofty had not asked me, especially about those signals involved here. And Ronnie asks, when more German rail and not this semi-drunk German? Semi-drunk German is a great one. Huh. Who is the semi-drunk German? I don't know. Well, we come back to German, more German. I actually am planning on doing something about Indusi 60 and PZB 60M and stuff with the Mittenwaldbahn, and maybe then the new version of the Crocodile. Let's see what we can do with that. Einfahrgeschwindigkeitsverringerungstafel. in regards to the language sounding somewhat drunken German. Alright. You're not talking about me sounding semi-drunk, right? Then I won't comment on other people's stream, I guess. We will get more German content too. This is probably the last one about Dutch in the route in this series, and then we can come back to more German stuff. And we have more signals to discuss here, but before we do that, this conversation is getting somewhere. Before we talk more about other signals, just get something to relax, because that with the tunnel was quite complicated. Some signals that are not really difficult to understand. We have seen that instead of the hectometer boards that we know from Germany with one number on top and one number of the bottom, we have hectometer signs as well in the Dutch system. The game is not completely coherent in the way whether they always put the 100 number in a bigger font type than the other one. Typically it does not put a 0.0. Sometimes you can also find boards with the kilometer number being big and the fraction being small. Chapter, don't study this, it won't be on the test. Yeah, because it's too easy. But there is also something in it that's interesting. One thing, for example, is that it is not always 200 meter in between. Sometimes it is just 100 meter in between those signs. And I also do not know why in the game, at least, you can sometimes have one and the same sign being as a sign popped up on the ground, and then on the next overhead catenary mast with the same numeral on top of it. If this is prototypical, I did not check it out on a cap view video. It is just something that comes to your mind. Then sometimes you have them crossed out, and this is something that indicates that it is an overgang between two counting streaks. In Germany, this is typically not announced in any way. It just starts with a different counting, with a different indication here. You can only see it on your Ebula typically, or on your Buchfahrplan that a new sequence of counting starts. Here there is actually a way to put this on the signals that you can find in the real world on the tracks. And yeah, then here, for example, this is, you're going into a line that has a counting of its own. So those are those hectometer boards. They are more or less self-explanatory. Then sometimes you have those round signs with a numeral and a numeral, a smaller numeral put on top. Those are boards that announce that there will be a level crossing at this point in your track. So this is not 0.654 here, but this sign announces typically in Remweg Abstand. So depends on how fast you can go on this line, between 800 and 1200 meters. There will be a level crossing, and then there is actually a level crossing at this point. This is where I put the hectometer board here. It's not actually clear for me because I don't know the operating rules, what you have to do when this is announced to you. If you just have to be more attentive or whatever, at least this is what you can go by. It announces a level crossing, and they can come also in this sequence. If you have two of them on the same mast, then they announce two level crossing in short succession. And this can also look like this. This is not 78 2/3, but this is 78 kilometers, and 200 and 300 meters you will have a level crossing each. So those double signs you can find in the game, those I have not seen so far. And then, because it has a nice word, this is what in the, says Ronnie, what in the head. Nice thing to go to the Koeienkop What is that? A cow's head. Actually, I found this word somewhere. I don't know if it is an official name for the Koeienkop. Did I type it wrong? No, Koeienkop is correct. It's the cow's head. So you know at what kilometer you run into something suspect. Yeah, that's the point. Why is it the Koeienkop? Because it looks like a cow with the two horns on the head, and those are typically shown in front of a junction together with a high signal typically. Correct, but never heard it before. Okay. I found it on a site of some engineers, some signaling engineers site. How does this look like a cow? The CD radar. Well, this is the cow's face or the nose maybe, and this is one horn and this is the other horn. This is why it's called the Koeienkop. And the Koeienkop does not show any lights as long as the signal that is connected with it is red. And as soon as it is green, it tells you what direction you're going. So it's a bit like a smaller version of the British feather that you can have on junction signals. CD radar. A V would be too sober, says Ronnie. And a Rorschach test failed. Yes, he did not see the cow in it. And obviously, if you go into the other direction, then it is sending you this in this direction, right? And we have one in the game at Meppel, because that is the only junction that we really have on the way between Zwolle and Groningen. And this one works. Unfortunately, we can always go to the right, but if you use the free roam feature, it can also indicate to the left. And then, now we are actually leaving the concept of the Koeienkop. What happens if you have 3 possibilities to go at this point? Then you can even have a third one, and that will be a 3-horned cow, and that is lentils, CD radar would call it. Well, guys, I don't know what's the best solution for that, but then you can also have this one. And the normal name in the rules for it is a Richtingaanwijzer, what tells you where to go. So the British feather is something closely related. In the French system, you might remember you have 1, 2, 3 white lamps indicating whether you're going to first left, the second left, or the right left. On a diplomat, AI would call it Wisselanduiding. Maybe. And now give me the name for a thing that has 3 possibilities to go, then we are out of the V again. Yeah, that's that. That is not rocket science. It is not as difficult and complicated as the tunnel regime, but just to pay some kudos to the fact that we have it in the game. And it is a thing, from what I've read, that is not installed anew anymore. So they are still in the tracks, but they are dying out, just as the code whistle sign that we have talked about on last week's stream. The Verkenbord, the Treinlegteborden, and the pileboard we will talk about when we have played some more. Let's just go back to our train here and maybe leave this heavy freight train here. Delito. Get this thing out of the way. Let's spawn something nice and cozy like a Sprinter new generation. Why do I always type it as an H instead of an N? Empty. Don't want to bother the passengers. And I will show you the Koeienkop. That we have here. What is wrong? Did not do it properly. And I will set a path into the void. That will be here towards Leeuwarden. CD Radar says, "Ah, I hate that this chair doesn't have a headrest." Okay. So, probably on the wrong side of the track because we are only getting dwarf signals. But let's check if that is a situation that I meant with having it on. Yeah, here you have it on the catenary only, but sometimes you have it on the catenary and then on a hectometer board on the ground as well. Ah, no, I destroyed the effect because I was on the wrong track. Let's restart it. If I go this way, I won't see the Koeienkop because I'm on the wrong platform. I think I have to start here to get my Koeienkop. Don't push me off the platform, guys. And did you see? The signal is switching to yellow because we are not going actually very far. And a bit hidden with the Snelheidsboard with the 8. We can see our Koeienkop in front of this signal. Indicating to the left. And if we change the path, if we remove it, it turns off when the signal is red. And if we set the path to the right, like over there, it will indicate as much. So the Koeienkop is working well. Another set of signals that we will talk about is overall DLC rating out of 10. I should say it is a 9. I normally don't do ratings. But taking into account that it is the first DLC in a new country, that we get 2 new trains, new signaling system, new safety system actually that they have running the safety systems, unlike US content, for example. Yeah, this is what I was trying to talk about on the next part, or yeah, the last part of the presentation actually, is those signs. I think CD Radar asked me about those signs when we were first playing this route. what they are good for. If I get it correct again, it is vaste waarschuwingeninstallaties by uitzichtbelemmerde objecten. We will see it on the presentation later. WIBOs. And they are not important for you as a driver actually, but only for people working on the tracks. So having anything to do on the tracks, working there, doing their jobs, then you need those signals to warn you if there is a train coming in. The owner diplomat says, I heard from someone who works in Trains and World that there will be another route on the 27th or 29th February of 2006. I don't know. I have no idea. Even if I had heard it, I'd probably not be, I'd probably not have the liberty to talk about it, but I have no idea. Maybe that is. And Ronnie says, man, I really feel like getting back into Trains and World since I'm now on PC, but I'm scared of it being a money pit with doing this in real life. Yeah, well, that is actually always the question. The nice thing is that you are free to go on so many different routes and trains and Trains and World. And it must be frustrating to know how this really works and how it is done in the simulation then. The Onnen diplomat, it is kind of a money pit, but at the same time it's not. Well, if you don't actually think that you have to own each and every DLC and only pick the ones that you like and pick them on a sale, then I think it is a decently priced hobby after all. It always seems quite expensive, but on the other hand, buying a new route that can keep you busy for hundreds of hours virtually is the price of a meal in a halfway decent restaurant, no? Just give me a study level ICE already. Okay, those were those WIBOs. We will talk about it in the presentation in a moment. Now I will take you to Beilen and show you something that I have actually not been able to work out or find out. Yeah, an expert version of the 407 408. So Beilen, why Beilen? Because they have some funny stop markers that I wanted to direct your attention to, and maybe someone can tell me what kind of stop marker boards they are. We are here at Beilen. Can actually fix this windmolen so that I don't miss the badge for April again, because I don't collect any collectibles. Nice level crossing here, huh? I've seen that many passengers don't use it anyway, but they just run across the tracks. And you might already have realized that those signs here are stop markers. And what I have not been able to find in the rules are stop markers that have two numerals, both white on blue. We will see what I have been able to find in real life moment, because people are not going just running across the tracks. I have found something where you have one white numeral on blue and a blue numeral on white, but not two white numerals on blue. And furthermore, if you run a cap view video that runs through Bylan, it is exactly as it is in the game. Two white numerals on blue background. According to my calculations, you get 480 minutes of playtime for €1 in the Dutch DLC. Okay. I don't know what you're calculating. Let's have a presentation. You get actually a lot of presentation today for free. Verkenbord, Treinlegteborden and pijlbord. I always have to pay attention that I don't say Varkenbord, because I always read Varkenbord and think, what does it have to do with pigs? Let's go. Okay. This is our line, this is the platform, this is our train coming in. And the first thing that we see announcing a station is this stretched S-board. I still think you should just do the Quereinstieg at this point. Ronnie, I don't have the time. It'd be so funny, but I would have to somehow make it work together with my job. This is the Verkenbord, stopping point announcement board. It tells us that there is a platform coming in braking distance. Again, depends on how fast we can go on this line. This will tell us in what distance actually to the platform we can we can put up this sign here. What I also do not exactly know is up to what point this is calculated, whether it is the beginning of the platform or whether it is some sort of a stopping point there. According to what the rules say, it sounds like it is the beginning of the platform, but I cannot really do and tell you. Those are our stop markers. They look a bit like the signs that tell you to turn on or off the main circuit breaker and put your pantographs up and down. Probably 1 kilometer from the platform, like a NE5. Yeah, it's the NE5 kilometer until the platform starts. Then probably it's the same. So it's not until the point where you have to stop with your train, but it is the point where the platform starts. I think it is the safer choice, so most probably the choice here. And here the braking distance depends on how fast you can go on your line. It's not always 1 kilometer, unlike the German system, but it depends on the line speed typically. And then the distance is more or less NE6 alt. Alright, I know at least which one. The rectangular one, landscape format, white with the black stripes, right? That one. Our stopping board here. What I was saying, it looks like those electrification signs for main circuit breaker, pantograph up and down, but it is not. There is nothing white in it. It is just the blue diamond on the white diamond. And if there is no numeral, then it is the catch-all sign. If this is the only sign on your platform, then this is the point where your train has to stop. If you're a passenger trains, all those stopping boards and also the Verkenbord is only for passenger trains, because obviously only passenger trains need to align with the platform, because on freight trains you don't have to bother that your pieces of good have a platform to get on or off the train, and since they have any kinds of lengths, then you need to have different precautions for that. And Yeah, this is the one. If there is no other board, then you have to stop here, and it is in this DLC actually nicely modeled that the stop markers are typically in a way that the tip of your train, not your driver sitting position, aligns with this sign here. If you have more of them, then you can have numerals, then that is the 304B version, and they are called Treinlegteborden, what translates to train length boards for passenger trains, and those are the stop markers here. And it is always to be read in a way that for trains up to so and so many vehicles. What indicates that vehicles must be more or less all the same length for this to make sense. So typically the numbers are counting up. Bellados, hi Tigerways, I always enjoy your explanations a lot. I am currently in training for train driver at the NS, the Netherlands Spoorweg. Is so great. Thank you for this comment, and thank you for appearing on the stream. And Spectre says, unless you transport Varkens. Yeah, the Varkens, they probably need a special ramp to get on and off our train. And Donut Diplomat, already past 9 and I have some important tests tomorrow. I gotta go study. I'll watch the stream later on YouTube. Have a nice rest of the day, Donut Diplomat. Yeah, so if you have 3 cars on your train, then you pass the marker with the 2 and stop at the marker with the 4. If you have 5 not cars in your train, vehicles in your train, also counting the locomotive or the locomotives. So if you have 5 vehicles, then you pass also the 4 and stop at the one with no numeral. But this is the one that I talked about. That would be in the rules the 304C. Here you have 6 and 2, 1 white on blue and 1 blue on white. And if you read the description for this, then you have to introduce another thing, a Perronphase. A Perronphase. What are platform divisions? So let's say we have a station area where we have 2 tracks actually. This is a new example here. Those are the 2 tracks, and this is our platform. And at some point there is a connecting track, like a crossover, where you can go from one track to the other, next to the platform. And you have different parts of the platform, divisions, like in German, you have almost everywhere those signs, A, B, C, D. Actually, I'm not entirely sure if they use signs of that kinds in the Netherlands as well, but you understand what I'm trying to say. And trains can stop at different Perronphases. And now let's look at a train with 6 vehicles. It is totally okay for a train with 6 vehicles to stop at this point if it is coming along this track here. Whereas it is not really helpful for this train with 6 vehicles if it is coming across the switch and stop at this point, right? Because then people only have 2 cars to get, or only 1 car and the locomotive to get on the train, and then they have to walk along all the train. This is nothing, this you can't do. Yeah, this will create panic and a lot of distress. So this 6-car train would have to go to the catch-all stopping board here. Whereas a train that is only 2 cars in length can come across the switch and then stop at this board. So this is the description for the 304C board that seems to make sense, involving a switch at this point. So that you know to which track the sign belongs, we have those arrow boards, the pile boards, not only with the stop markers, but with all kinds of signals. We find this in many systems, any kinds of arrows indicating to what track the sign belongs. Here you can have it pointing downwards, and if it is applicable to both tracks, then you have those somehow crossed arrows left and right. Might have seen them in the game a lot, though they just tell you to which track the sign belongs to. And now this one is the one that actually makes me ponder. Not only are there two white numerals on black background. It is also that the lower numeral is up and the higher numeral is at the bottom of the sign. And if we look back into the game, you can see that there is no switch far and wide. So the thing with trains coming in across a switch cannot be the reason for this. So there must be some other reason. And Belodus, maybe you know or can tell us what this version of the Treinlegtebord is actually for. 8 and 12, and we can find one with lower numerals but with the same system some way further on, like here, 2 and 6. So maybe this applies to different kind of vehicles. Acknowledging the fact that railway vehicles do not always need to be of the same length. Inspector says inverted cowhead. You stop there if you have 2 or 6 cars. Okay. Probably because the distance to the end of the platform, 2 and 6 car trains. And then on the back of the platform, it is 2 and 6, and there we have 8 and 12. So why not just make this a completely blue one and the other one with a 6? Then you would stop all the trains with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vehicles at the board with a 6, and all other trains with at the other Treinlegtebord would have the same effect, no? Or anything? Yeah, but why both? So if we put one with a 6 here and one without any numeral, then all trains up to 6 vehicles stop here and the others go on. I would not need to put 2 numbers on it. You know, like the Orientierungstafel in Germany, the blue white ones with the meters written on it. Yeah, I know. I understand. But why do we have 2 numerals on those here? That depends. It has to do with the station layout, but I'm not fully sure. He says Belodus and Juniper. And if you have 7 cars, you just pick wherever. Well, the normal system, let's go back to the presentation to show you what I'm talking about. The normal system is you have numerals and all the trains that have up to this number of vehicles stop here, and if you have more vehicles you go on to the next. If you fit underneath the 4 you stop here, if not you go to the one that does not have any. And here in this station layout why can I not leave my thing here? If you have one with a 6 here and at the end of the platform one without any numeral, you stop the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vehicles here, and with 7 and more at the other end. Why do we need to have 2 and 6 and 8 and 12 at the end? That is what is confusing me. Then you must use the 8 board, right, Spectre? With a 7 one. Yeah, that's true. So when coming with a train with up to 6 vehicles, I will have to stop here. Agree. If you have 7 or more, you go to the end of the platform. Agree. But why not just put a 6 here and no numeral on the other one, instead of putting a 2 and 6 and an 8 and 12 on the end? At any rate, this is confusing me. Is there more to talk about? Ah, yeah, obviously, our Verträgtsein-Licht. We see this a lot, and we see this typically flashing. If the signal associated with it is red, then we don't have a white light here, and it gives you the clearance for starting the dispatch procedure. Now what they are talking still from 6 to 7 car, this results in a very different center position for the train for getting off. Yeah, if you only have a 2, 4, 6, 8, then with a 2 car you'd end up way before. Yeah, but it does not change anything. If you have a sign telling you 2 and 6, you stop with your 2 train there. If you have a sign telling you 6, you stop with your 2 train, a 2 car train at the same spot. No? You would have, you need more signs like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. This makes sense. Then you stop your train in different positions. At least the weather is nice. Aber ich meine in Relation zum Abgang des Bahnhofs, ja. I get it, but in my understanding it does not make any difference for where you have to stop your train. You have only 2 signal stopping positions. And you'd have the same result with boards telling you 6 and no numeral. Right? So why do this complicated 2 and 6 and 8 and 12 if 6 and nothing actually leads to the same effect? Okay, let's close this thing about this Treinlegtebord and go to the Verträgtsein-Licht. Clearance for starting dispatch procedure signal. That is actually something that I think can only be understood if you think back a couple of decades and how it was nowadays. And nowadays we are more or less trained, especially if you're playing Train Sim World, because it is a single player game, that the train driver actually does everything: opening the doors, closing the doors, starting the train, stopping the train, asking the dispatcher, and so on. And if you think back at a couple of decades, then those responsibilities were actually more distributed among different people. The train driver was not necessarily the person responsible for the train, but you could have a Zugchef or a Zugführer on your train who was actually the person responsible that the train is all fit to leave a station, and would allow the driver, or order him even, to start the train and oversee the dispatch procedure, making sure that everyone is on board that needs to be on board and the doors are closed properly, and more things, and then would signal the driver to go. Nowadays, where we are used running EMUs up and down the line with only the driver doing everything, this seems a bit weirder. But think back in this situation where you actually have a person responsible on the train, like a head guard or a conductor or a Zugführer, who is in who is the person in charge of overseeing the dispatch procedure. On the other hand, you have a person responsible for everything on the platform in the stations. Yeah, and so dispatching a train like 120 years ago or something was even a more complicated procedure. It was not just closing the doors and off you go, but you had to make sure that the train had all the cars that it needed to have. Maybe you have to attach some cars, maybe you need to have to remove some cars at this station, maybe you have to pack something into the accompanying luggage cars or whatever, maybe you had special staff, maybe you needed an additional locomotive or whatever. So dispatching a train was actually more complicated than dispatching a Talent 2 by closing the doors and pushing the lever to the front. And I'm not scoffing the ICEs, they still have a Zugchef maybe. I don't know if the Zugchef is then responsible for things like that, but it is definitely not what we see in the game, right? See the radar, we don't have anything like that here, and the driver stops wherever he seems fit, preferably closest to the underpass. And ICE is great, except that double-decker thing. Well, we talk about things later. Back to our Vertrekseinlicht. So this is a signal that actually is not for the driver, but for the person responsible for the train and dispatching the train out of the station. And for that, typically this person needs to know if the signal is green, but not so that the train can go into the section of track, but that it is safe to start the dispatch procedure. So actually the person responsible for the track safety and the station maybe allows the person responsible for the train to start the dispatch procedure, and at the end of the dispatch procedure this person responsible for the train signals the driver that the driver can go. And this sign, the Vertrekseinlicht, tells this person responsible for the train that he can start the dispatch procedure, so that the person responsible for the station is in accordance with that this train can start its dispatching procedure. And it is signaled with a steady white light or with a flashing white light. And I actually spent a lot of time trying to find out what is the difference between a steady white light and a flashing flashing white light, right? In Belarus says normally the conductor is the chef, the Zugchef. Yeah, if you actually have one, right? Sometimes you have train staff on your, at least regio trains, who do not seem to be in charge of the train, but more or less like a helper or an aide to the driver here. And Belarus says we normally have always one. Okay, nice. So that will put this guard or conductor in the position of being the best. And Ronnie says Triebfahrzeugführer und Zugführer at the same time equals both still the best thing in his opinion. Alright. It is great to have an opinion from someone who is actually doing this, but you agree that in former times those responsibilities were typically split, and I think more or less where we are going to with driver-only operations, those responsibilities are merged in the one person driving the train actually. Inspector says, I have an idea. Maybe the two numeral signs are to be read like this: stop a train up to the top number, but also a train with the bottom number. For example, on a 2-4 sign, you stop 1, 2, and 4 car trains, but move on with 3, 5, 6, and so on. And what is the point on moving on with a 3-car train and stopping with a 4-car train? I don't see it. And CD Radar says, I don't have any conductors, just occasional ticket inspectors. Yeah, Ronnie, I still defo has its plus sides, especially for having 2 pair of eyes looking at operational regards. Yeah, that's the point. But what we actually have to get out of this for reading those signals, they are not for the driver in his capacity as the driver, but it is for the head guard, conductor, Zugführer, the one who is actually responsible for the train, that may be in the same person, the driver, to allow this person to start the dispatch procedure. And this is typically connected with the exit signal being set to green. It can differ with group exit signals. Then you sometimes have to have an additional clearance to the green signal at the exit, so that you can actually start your dispatch procedure at this point. What I was trying to do, Inspector says, maybe the doors don't align on a 3-car train. Maybe. Your guess is as good as mine in this context. What was the difference between the flashing and the non-flashing Vertrekseinlicht? Flashing, non-flashing, 706 is non-flashing. Knipperend Vertrekseinlicht here with a hyphen in the rules is 700. And if you read the rules, it says for the 700, clearance for starting the departure, the dispatch procedure. And on the 706, it says there is clearance for starting the dispatch procedure. And, well, I found a source that tells us it is actually totally the same what those signals tell us. They started out being a non-flashing light, and then conductors complained that they sometimes don't see the light, so they tried using to have a flashing light, and they saw it better. And it was actually on this part of track between Meppel and Groningen where those flashing Vertrektzeinlichten had been in use for the first time and tested, and then they thought, well, it's actually better to have it flashing. This is why they are flashing and not steady. What the signal tells you is, from what I've read, totally the same. And you see them flashing a lot every time you have a green signal. So even if you don't stop. You know more than me, says Pelodus. Well, I can read the rules. You know how to do this or in real life. So would be great. It's so great to have you on the stream and give us your inside view. So this is the flashing one. I've compared this with some other signals that we know from other signaling system. In Germany we have the Fahrtanzeiger, what for whatever reason does not have a NEX number or whatever. It is the clearance for departure marker, most probably because it is addressed to the person in charge of the train, not the driver, because it is not a signal. That's more or less the point. Yeah, you're right. It is addressed to the Zugchef, to the Zugführer, and telling them that they can actually start dispatching the train. In Austria, we have it as a Z. For some reason, I thought it is also a V, but it's a Z for Zustimmung. And in the UK, it is most probably, or it is closest to the off indicator, because to start the dispatch procedure on British trains, you have to have a proceed aspect on the exit signal, and this off indicator tells the staff on the train that there is a proceed aspect on the starter signal. More the right away, but the right away is already further down the dispatch procedure. Ronnie says, I had it a few times now where it showed go, but the signal was still red with a Fahrtanzeiger. Okay. I think those Fahrtanzeiger, sometimes you see them, at least if you are as a passenger on German stations, they are constantly on, the Fahrtanzeiger. So they are probably disconnected and are not really used anymore. That was that. More stuff from the yard. For that, we move using the quick travel feature, go to Haren. And in Haren there is Onnen depot next to it. Can we actually go from here into the depot? Yes, we can drive from here into the depot. Go to the correct track. Yeah, like here for example, you have a non-numeral Treinlegtebord and all the trains stop there, and you have numbered Treinlegteborden that tell you where to stop your trains with less cars. Let's probably use a funny locomotive that can actually go there in the yard, not that we get stranded. Let's use the G6. It's just so loud. Let's activate the safety systems even if they do not work here. These boards would sketch me out so bad, because as you said, they do look like somewhat like EL6 signals. Yeah, exactly. And how bad a EL6 signal can be. We have seen this on some Trainfluencers channel quite recently. Well, where do I want to go? Onnen Yard. Well, just let's put the path to the whole thing, and we can go. I'm talking about Lock Life's channel, and he put up a video where he ran past, I don't know if it's the number correct, the EL6 that does not allow you to... You should start a YouTube channel. It's the one that does not allow you to pass it if you are an electric train with pantos. And this was the last video on his channel so far. What he said, because I enjoyed his videos. He says, sadly, DB Fanverkehr is somewhat strict when it comes to do just that. Alright. Because DB Regio is very open with that, no? You have so many Regio drivers on YouTube. Yeah, when I used to drive for Regio, it was way more chill, he says. Velodus, the boards are actually for the length of intercity train wagons. So for example, the SNG has shorter wagons, so you can stop at a different board. We use a conversion table for this. Ah, okay. Maybe this is what I said, acknowledging the fact that railway vehicles actually have different lengths. And the reference one is the intercity. There is also a nice channel by a freight driver. So which one, Spectre? So just to remind you a bit, it was a yellow with 4, and now it is a yellow plane. It's called Rotausleuchtung. Yeah, I've seen it before, Ronnie. You can, as you see with some people, but this would mean a lot of work to get it all set up, and you end up constantly watched and criticized. Well, I guess this is quite annoying. So we're going in the yard now with the caution aspect. I actually like the sound on the G6. Hopefully the switches are aligned properly, otherwise we might derail with our little locomotive. So you can see, going straight ahead at this point here will get us out of the electrified part. And why I took you here is a sign that we are approaching right now. Ronnie says my Insta is enough for me. A few years ago I thought different about all of this, but others can do that if they want. Alright. So, now you can see stop boards ahead. Using the power reverser on the G6 to slow down. It doesn't really slow down. Then we will use the loco brake. And this is why I took you here. Those signs. S and Bell, Trüffel and Zbk. That is a stop board, and this little text underneath this tells you what to do before you can proceed after you stopped. And Bell tells you to ring someone. And obviously TRFL and ZBG is whoever is responsible for the yard here, and you have to call this person or this institution. There is actually a YouTube video out there of you, Ronnie, giving an emergency call. Alright, we will have to look that up. But first, we will discuss stop boards and something like this, what you can encounter in a yard. This seems to be wrong. Normally it's TRDLNZBG. Oh, that is good. What is it? What is this abbreviation for? That I cannot tell you. The bell is... I like this. The Treinlegteborden says Treinlegteborden. Yeah. So this level is after the whole evening in the pub. Watch it be some unnecessary long word. The Treinlegteborden, train dispatcher, not controlled area by signals. Ah. Interesting. So we know that on map. What did they put on their sign? Let's check it again. It was TRFL and ZBG. So maybe they got a letter wrong. Bell is so funny in the Netherlands, in Dutch, because it means to call, like on a phone, for example. And bellen in Germany is what the dog does. It barks. Der Hund bellt. And if you say that in Dutch, the Hund bellt, then you're saying that your dog is calling someone on the phone. Well, maybe I'm the only person finding this funny, but I find this funny because dogs are involved. Okay, this is our yard here a bit, like those tracks where you can stable your trains, and they are typically aligned in a way where you can access them from a central point. Your dog's bells, yes. And then let's start with this thing we talked about. Some parts do not have bark at dispatch as suspect on noon and midnight. Guys, you're up funny tonight. No overhead catenary on parts of those tracks, and they are sometimes woof. They are sometimes announced with signs like this. And here again, blue diamond on white diamond, but now something in the middle. This is the sign that we know in a lot of it's the same sign, not more or less, in a lot of signaling systems. Bord 1, the bovenleiding, means there is the end of the overhead catenary, or a stop sign for trains with pantographs, typically. Don't enter this, and this is what I was talking about, Local Life channel. I always enjoyed his videos, and the last one was where he, ran his Vectron, probably, it was, or trucks, I don't know, for whatever reason, while shunting at the end of the shift in a piece of track with no overhead catenary, and that was quite disagreeable, and we never got to hear the end of the story because there was no video anymore. Ronnie says planes have meowing on guard. We got barking. It's only fair. Barking Riverside. I don't have the DLC for barking Riverside. And in emergency you howl. Now it is going. The only thing that is quite unique is this special board that tells you that it is not for straight ahead, but for diverging to the left or to the right. And obviously you can have it to the other direction as well. Then there are sometimes those grayish bars connected with switches. Those are the Freibalg. Oh, unfortunately, I had a thing saying Freibalg here. They are a bit like in Austria the Grenzmarke or the RA12 Grenzzeichen in Germany. Why no cowhead here? Yeah, why not? This is actually a flathead, whatever, it's a Freibalg, the V-marker, that tells you that your train cannot stand beyond this point without fouling the track that is coming the other way across the switch, at the front and at the back. In German operating rules you find always the Grenzzeichen Freiheit, or that you tell the dispatcher that your train or your vehicle is Grenzzeichen frei. That means that you're not fouling any Grenzzeichen, no Freibalgs, no markers here. And this is the furthest position that your vehicle can stand without actually interfering with the other paths. And then we were talking about those stop boards. If you look at it a bit more closely, they are toe. And this is actually what I think I wrote, because it is in the rules. TROL, NZBG. I have to deny some viewer sellers again. That is a stop board. That means you have to stop, and then you have to do what it says on the sign below. It is an Opdracht, an assignment, an Auftrag in German. So you have to do something. You have to call this institution here. I do it for you, says Cedric. Okay, I just leave it to you. And yeah, you have to call this guy. And then probably this guy will tell you what to do. And you can see the problem. Not all trains on all those tracks can start at the same time, because then they will collide on this piece of track here beyond the switches. And we do not have so many signals that every track here has its own signal. So it needs to be more or less controlled and organized on the phone who can actually go at this point. You call this guy, the guy tells you wait here until I allow you to go. If there is no Opdracht on this sign actually, then you stop and you can go on. Does not necessarily need to be an Opdracht to call someone who tells you to stop at this point. Can be something else, like stop and hoot your horn 3 times and then go on. I don't know if something like this exists, but the system of the sign will allow that. You stop, you do what the assignment tells you. Bark, for example. You bark 3 times. That's actually good. If you're a dog running a train and not a tiger, then you can just bark 3 times and then you can go on. Pee on the wheel. No, that's not a good thing. And then you can go on. This is on the white version of the stopping board. There are also stopping boards in the rules like this. They have those red stripes underneath, the rote Stripe, and that is typically also connected with a number plate, and this functions as a signal. And here you actually need the clearance of the guy that you are calling. Here you need 2 stemming, and without that you cannot pass this board according to the rules. There are quite many different versions of those stopping boards, and I cannot really tell you how they are used, especially in the context. I can only tell you what I got out of the rules here at this point. So the white one and the one with the stripes, the difference is that with the striped one, you have to have a clearance to pass them, while with the white ones, you only have to do what is put onto you with the assignment tiger stripes or Spectre. Some serious barking. Yeah, you have to bark and you actually have to listen for an answer, and you need to get the clearance. This is maybe because this has a number like a proper signal, while the other one has not. And then there are also versions that have a white light on top of them, the WIDO lamp, and this typically sounds like an RA11. Yeah, I have to think more about this to say something else. It's probably a bit from out of the same cupboard. The white lamp can tell you something about the status of the switches beyond this point. Yeah, the yellow W in yards. But there you need the clearance from the Verkenbord, right, to go on. Typically with a SH1 displayed on those signals. Same as here, I presume. Yeah, probably it's the same guy who is in control of the area not controlled by signals. And the white lamp can tell you something about the switches beyond this point. If the white lamp is on, you can typically rely that your path is set for you and the switches are in the proper connection, or at least in a connection that you can see from the signs at the switches. And if the white lamp is off, then you have to be prepared to set the switches by hand. This white lamp can also appear on those boards, and they have those numbers here. And lamp on, typically you can rely on the switches. Off, you cannot rely on the switches. Then there are stop boards without an S that look a bit like the red and white version of the station sign what we talked about in the German context with black and white. This is a fakultativ stop board. And why is it fakultativ? Because you can have the clearance before you actually get to this board. Then you don't have to stop in front of it. Then you don't have to call this troll that is announced here. But you can just pass it if you have the clearance before. With those here, you have to stop anyway and get the clearance then. And with those here, you can have the clearance preemptively and can pass them. They can also come with white lamps, and then they have all those different numbers set on them according to the rules. This is just a quick overview here. I cannot really tell you how the yards are constructed and those signs are used, just to get them on the board. And now finally to WUBO, WIBR, WIDO and WIT. That was the sign that we just looked at when in passing, and there are signals for personal safety. So it is nothing that we have to comply with when running the train, but it is helping us if we have to walk around the line to do whatever we are charged doing there. Signen voor de persoonlijke veiligheid. And to start with the least complex probably is de vaste waarschuwingsinstallatie voor dienstoverpaden. The WIDO. I translated it with fixed warning installation for duty footpaths. This situation, there is a track and there is some footpath for someone working there for whatever reason. Maintenance, shunting, putting cargo on the train, going home, whatever. There is a footpath and that crosses the line. And here you can have like 2 lamps on top of them. And if there is a path set along this track, like train coming here, so that the path is set then they start flickering. Knippern. So if they are off, it is 720, and if they are on in knippern, then it is 721. So those knippernde Lichten here can tell you, as a person using this footpath, that there is a train coming. That is quite straightforward. Something similar you can have on bridges. Vaste waarschuwingsinstallatie op bruggen. Fixed warning installations on bridges. Like you have here 3 tracks next to each other on a bridge. And then you can have signs. I've tilted it by 90 degrees to align with the direction that someone is walking along the bridge here. You can see that for every track, typically, you have a set of 2 white lights in this elongated diamond thingy. And as long as both white lamps are lit, you can be quite sure that there is no train coming on this track. If there is a train coming, then the corresponding diamond will start alternatingly flashing the white lamps. In Belodoses, the WIBR, WIDO and WIT work when the dispatcher sets a route. Yeah, this is what I've read for the Dienstoverpaden thingy, that as soon as there is a route set, those thingies go off. So it is not necessarily that the train already needs to be in the section. Thank you for confirming this. But it is already enough that the route is set. And then you know that in train nadert, that is what the route says. The train nadert here. And then, you know, you need to be careful with this track because there is a train coming in, and the one with the tunnel version, vaste waarschuwingsinstallatie in tunnels, the WIT, is more or less the same, but only one, at least according to the rules, but the principle is the same. Here we have the number 710 for the non-flashing version and the 711 for the flashing version, and the tunnel version is essentially the same, different numbers, and only one and no more of them. And then finally, the one that we have spotted in the game, the vaste waarschuwingsinstallatie bij uitzichtbelemmende objecten. Fixed warning installations at sight restricting objects. Uitzichtbelemmende objecten is a great word. Belemmend. In Germany, if you say something like, ich war noch ganz belämmert, that means that you woke hard from a nap and are still a bit disoriented and not quite there. And here you can have uitzichtbelemmende objecten. And that means that there is something in the way, like you're in the bend, or there is a structure, or ich sag doch besoffenes Deutsch. Siehst? Ja, you are right, besoffenes Deutsch. Or vegetation, or whatever. And then, to make this clear here, I've indicated the signal in the view from the left and in the view from the right, so those are not two different signals. It is the same signal, one's viewed from the left, one's viewed from the right. And if there is the route set and the train coming, then from what is set out in the rules, you would have the one flashing that is positioned in a way that if you look at the signal, the train is coming towards you from behind the signal, not the one on the other side. In the game, it is sometimes that also this, or only the one that you're looking on, is flashing. You sometimes can drive your train towards Meppel and you see this signal actually flashing. I think properly it would not be the way, because the one on the other side is only the one that should be flashing, if I understand this correctly. So you as a driver on the train should actually not see it flashing unless there is a train coming from the opposite direction, and that is something that yeah, might actually spook you a bit, no? If you see that flashing and telling you, "Whoops, there's a train coming on your track from the opposite direction," you might consider yanking in your brakes and perform an emergency brake application. If you have two lines, then you can have those lights on both sides of the pole, and then the one light or pair of lights is for one track and the other one is for the other track. And I think if I read the rules correctly, if the train is coming from this direction, then only the one on the opposite side should flash. And Bellodo says the WUBO works via the electrical separation weld. Basically, if a train drives into a block section, it starts working. Ah, I see. So there it is not the route that is relevant, but getting into the track circuit that it is connected with across the electrical separation weld. But can you confirm that it should actually be the side that the driver cannot see that should be flashing, and not the one that the driver sees that should be flashing? That would be interesting. Because as far as I understand it, the idea is that someone working on this side of those buildings here cannot see a train coming, and this is why the signal is flashing for him to warn him off. Yes, you never see one flashing on your track. That is good. Then I got it correctly. And Ronnie says, how does your apprenticeship work, if you don't mind me asking? Are you allowed to choose what trains you're driving? Okay, now they are into professional talk between rail drivers. So we actually have at least 3 professional rail drivers on the stream tonight. I am so honored. How do you know which track it relates to, left, right? So typically it relates to, if you look at the signal here from the left, then this one is associated with the left track and the right one is associated with the right one. And also, if you look at it from the opposite side, then everything turns around. Then the right track is all of a sudden the left track and the other way around. So I think it is the same orientation as the tracks. Don't know if I put this correctly with the height on the post in the game. I think it is the other way around. The one connected with the more remote track is the higher one, and the one with the closer track is the lower one. But I think if you're standing here and looking at the signal, it's the same orientation as the tracks that you have. Tiger, I can forward you that emergency video call via DM if you want. Yes, please, don't mind. As you mentioned, having a look at it. Yes, please send it to me on the direct message, and I will have a look at it and enjoy. We want to see it too, says CD Radar and Bolidus. We get a random mix of stopping trains in intercities and roads. That was what he can do. Feel free to share. Fine by me. Okay, I will share it as soon as I have it. Okay. And we have confirmed that we should not see those lights flashing. I think in the game we often see them flashing, especially when going outwards. I still have to confirm. Maybe it is for the opposite track that they are flashing, but I don't think so. I think we see them flashing when we're going out there. And those have the number 708 and 709. And that's it for today. And this is for Dutch signaling. It is also at the same time for Dutch safety systems. It was a quite presentation heavy stream today, I think. We just did a lot of free roam experiments and ran around on the yard a bit. But nevertheless, we are 2 hours and 12 minutes in. And I think I will call it a day at this point. And maybe to wind down, run one nice night service from Zwolle to Groningen on the SNG. so that I am fit for going to work tomorrow. Thank you. I see that it's here. I will share the video that Ronnie sent me with everyone who is interested. Just hit me. Just hit me. And now I move to Groningen. I need to disembark before I can do this. Okay, then I will just leave this locomotive here, put on the hard head, and disembark and go to Groningen. That we have some nice I can always screen share it, and I will try it if I can actually do this. "20 minutes in. Just hit me if you want it. I know that I sent it. Now I will not screen share it because I don't have a proper setup for my browser here to send it here. But I will give the link to everyone who is interested. And unfortunately, here is some fog. I always found this here a nice view on Groningen station. But with the fog, not so much. The more interesting building is over there. Belodus, I started learning the French signaling recently using your streams. It's crazy. Oh, I'm happy that you're learning the French signaling from my streams, and I would like to see more French content in the game, definitely. And yeah, French signaling is super interesting. There's the purple signals and everything. Yeah, guys, great to have you on the stream, all of you. And Juniper says, wow, that was high quality. Must have been a lot of work to put together. Vielen Dank. Thank you so much for this, Juniper. I'm really happy that you, being someone from the Netherlands, liked my content, and I'm so happy that you guys stayed with me all the time and discussed that. Great, as per usual, says Ronnie. Wunderbar. Thank you so much, and thank you for staying with me. I hope I will be back with some German content soon, and with something else. I don't know if I will be back with the German content next week. I actually have no idea yet what we will do, but for the Dutch content, it is what I'm doing with those 4 videos, and then it will be something new. Bahnsteig, the City Raider, thanks for the stream, Willodos. Guys, it's been great with you, and have a nice time. Take care, be nice to each other, and get through the next week the best you can do. See you around, bye bye.